Hey guys, election time is here, so I figured I would do a video talking about the candidates and specifically their policies, their views regarding animal welfare and environmental issues. To be clear, that's all I'm going to be talking about in this video, so, if you're interested in immigration or tax policy or school vouchers or whatever else, if that's what you prioritize, then I guess this wouldn't be a very interesting video for you. Obviously, if you prioritize those things, then that may lead you to prefer a candidate who is not so great when it comes to animal welfare or, climate change or whatever. So first, let's start with Trump. And interestingly enough, the Humane Society actually just put out an ad against Trump and actually endorsing Hillary Clinton. This is the first time I believe they have ever endorsed a candidate for president. There's a very long, the ad itself is all right, but the post on the website is quite long and pretty extensive and definitely worth a read. I'll put that in the description. One ticket has a clear, compelling record of support for animal protection, while the other has assembled a team of advisors and financial supporters tied in with trophy hunting, puppy mills, factory farming, horse slaughter, and other abusive industries. The names that Trump's campaign has floated for engagement on Interior and Agriculture Department issue are a who's who of zealous anti-animal welfare activists. So the ad starts with photos that many of you have probably seen of Donald Trump's sons, Eric and Donald Trump Jr., really gruesome photos of them with dead animals, with, cheetahs or jaguars, whatever else. They're trophy hunters, essentially, which may seem a little misleading at first because I don't think Donald Trump is responsible for what his adult sons are doing with their spare time. But as the ad goes on, actually, I'm not sure if they say it in the ad, but they do in the blog post, like I said, which is more extensive, that Donald Trump Jr. has been floated as a possible Interior Secretary. So knowing that this person who is very pro-hunter and very pro-trophy hunting has the ear of his father and possibly a very important position and power to actually affect animal advocacy and welfare in a negative direction, obviously that's pretty concerning. "We understand hunting as conservation," said Donald Jr. in an interview. "I don't know if I'd be the head of Interior or just informing the head, but rest assured that hunters and shooters and others know that I'd have his ear." And unfortunately, it gets worse. So another example of someone very close to Trump, Forrest Lucas. He is a frontrunner to be Interior Secretary, in addition to serving as a member of Trump's Agriculture Advisory Committee. Lucas is the money man behind the so-called Protect the Harvest, a front group devoted to fighting animal welfare organizations at every turn on everything. In terms of Trump's own personal views with regard to animal welfare, we do have this lovely tweet from March of 2015. "Ringling Brothers is phasing out their elephants. I, for one, will never go again. They probably used the animal rights stuff to reduce costs." So clearly someone who does not care so much about animals or animal rights stuff, as he says. So what about his views on the environment, specifically on climate change? Well, I think we're all familiar with his lovely tweet, climate change being a hoax manufactured by the Chinese, which he then denied in the second debate, I think it was. But the tweet's there, you can see it. Maybe he doesn't believe that anymore, but it's pretty clear that he doesn't care really about climate change. It's not one of his top priorities, would not be one of his top priorities as a president. And even worse, he has promised to undo CO2 regulations that Obama put in place, and he has claimed that he would pull out of the Paris Agreement. So now on to Hillary. As I already said, the Humane Society has endorsed her for president. They have recommended her, and they say that while Trump has advocates for trophy hunting, puppy mills, factory farming, and horse slaughter on his side, Hillary Clinton has a strong record of taking a stand against many of these issues. She published an animal welfare statement on her campaign website, noting that, quote, "The way our society treats animals is a reflection of our humanity." Clinton highlights the humane issues she plans to tackle as president, as well as her strong record on animal protection in the U.S. Senate and as Secretary of State. She pledges to crack down on abuses such as wildlife trafficking, puppy mills, and horse slaughter, and to support a federal anti-cruelty statute and more humane treatment of farm animals. Hillary Clinton is also science positive. For one thing, she believes that climate change is a thing, which is certainly a step in the right direction. And she's serious about doing something about it. Now, the best that she can, which will likely mean minimal improvements to the minimal improvements that Obama was able to make during his presidency. However, there is an interesting article at Vox about something she could do to make some pretty big changes. It involves the Clean Air Act and enacting a section, calling on a small section of that, Section 115, I think it is, that would basically potentially allow her to create a nationwide cap and trade system without Congress. Again, this is all just speculation. She hasn't talked about this or anything like that. It's just a maybe, possibly, perhaps could happen sort of thing. But certainly if one candidate would do it, it would probably be the one who believes in climate change and wants to do something about it, not the one who maybe believes in it, but not, and certainly doesn't want to do anything about it, even if he does. So now let's get to the Green Party and Dr. Jill Stein for the Green Party. And first, I just want to start with a quote from her. This is from her Reddit AMA when she was asked if she is vegan. And she says that, "I have been vegan or vegetarian for 45 years. Currently, I am vegan plus fish and occasional dairy for health reasons." I don't think that's vegan. I think that's like pescatarian, kind of, but occasional dairy, so not really. It's just, it's not really relevant because none of the relevant candidates are vegan, right? None of them are. So it doesn't really matter, but I just find it interesting that she would kind of try to pull that card. It seems a little disingenuous to me. It seems a little bit like she's trying to get vegans to vote for her. Like, yeah, I'm the one to support, right? So I thought that was a little funny. What really matters is her policy on animal agriculture, which is awful. You get a sense of this from the AMA right above her statement about being vegan, not vegan. So she wants to shift from animal agriculture, from an industrial large-scale animal agriculture to, small farms, basically. This is terrible for the environment. It's bad in terms of welfare, oversight, and it also means more subsidies so that these small farms can be financially viable, which means more taxpayer money going to meat and dairy industries. So from an agricultural perspective, there is no reason to believe that any part of her policies would be good for animals or for the environment. And it doesn't end there, it gets worse actually. So she also has a position on genetic modification, which is basically not just to label GMOs, but to ban them until they are deemed safe, what does that mean? Well, that means more testing, and more testing means more animal testing. And Jill Stein and the Green Party in general has other anti-science views that would harm people and animals as well. For instance, she says about vaccines, "There were concerns among physicians about what the vaccination schedule meant, the toxic substances like mercury, which used to be rampant in vaccines. There were real questions that needed to be addressed. I think some of them at least have been addressed. I don't know if all of them have been addressed." In other words, if you think there are still answers, if you think that we aren't sure about the safety of vaccinations, well, how do you determine whether or not they're safe? Well, more testing, and more testing means more animal testing. With regard to alternative medicine, specifically homeopathy, she says, "Just because something is untested doesn't mean it is safe. By the same token, being tested and reviewed by agencies tied to big pharma and the chemical industry is also problematic. There's a lot of snake oil in the system. We need research and licensing boards that are protected from conflicts of interest. They should not be limited by arbitrary definitions of what is natural or not." In other words, again, rather wishy-washy, just like her response to vaccines, but it's the same type of deal. Maybe there's something to them, and if you think that maybe there's something to it, maybe homeopathy actually works, well, how do you figure out if it works or not? Well, you do more testing, and more testing means animal testing, and whether it's homeopathy or Reiki or acupuncture, that's actually a good example just recently. We know acupuncture doesn't work. We know that sham acupuncture is just as effective as real acupuncture, if that tells you anything. And yet a study was conducted on rats where they actually made the rats alcohol dependent and then induced withdrawal, which is terrible. That is animal harm. That is unnecessary animal harm. Finally, before moving on specifically to her views on the environment and how, spoiler alert, those are awful as well, I just want to include this quote from the Huffington Post. This is a whole article I recommend reading on Jill Stein and her anti-science bullshit. But they say, recently, Stein went so far as to suggest wireless signals are bad for children's brains and punctuated her reckless statement with this alarmist soundbite. We make guinea pigs out of whole populations and then we discover how many die. Apparently, for all Stein is vehemently against, casual references to animal testing doesn't make the list. Yeah. So now on to Stein's energy policy. This could really be a video in and of itself. Starts out pretty good. You know, she does believe in climate change. That's cool. That's pretty much it. The rest is just pseudoscience. She's a big promoter of solar and wind, which they do have potential, but they are just not ready to take over all of our power yet. And no solar roadways are not the answer. The most disturbing with regard to Jill Stein's energy policy, and this is not really surprising because most environmentalists would see this as a good thing, unfortunately, but she wants to halt and shut down all nuclear power, which is cheaper and lower carbon than solar. Like I said, this could really be a video in and of itself, but there are some resources I definitely encourage you to watch. Michael Schellenberger, he has a TED Talk, How Fear of Nuclear Power is Hurting the Environment. That's very good. It's also pretty short as well. It's just on YouTube. And then there's also the documentary Pandora's Promise, which I saw it on Netflix not too long ago. It may still be on there, and I think it's on YouTube as well. I've included the links in the description. As a side note, before I move on to everybody's favorite libertarian, not libertarian, pothead, does he even care about... Does he even realize he's running for president? Gary Johnson. I do briefly want to mention Clifton Roberts, vegan Clifton Roberts for the Humane Party, because his energy policy is just as terrible as Jill Stein's. You know, just because someone is vegan doesn't mean they have any respect for science, and Roberts clearly does not. So finally we get to Gary Johnson, libertarian kind of Gary Johnson. So in terms of animal welfare, I could not find any sort of quote for him or position from him at all. Not surprising, given that most libertarians are not interested in that. They don't believe in animal rights, and they're only concerned about animal welfare from a social perspective. They don't want any sort of government involvement there. So again, not surprising that he hasn't commented on that at all. In terms of environment, he does believe in climate change, so that's good. He does support nuclear. He does actually kind of support the EPA, which again is why I say libertarian, not libertarian, because most libertarians do not support the EPA. They actually despise it. So that's pretty interesting, and has gotten him some heat, as well as some other comments as well that are not considered libertarian friendly. But that's a good thing that he's at least kind of pro EPA. Yeah, climate change, as I said, he does believe in it, but his solution for it is interesting. Basically, he's like, well, it's gonna happen, so we'll just have to move. We'll just have to inhabit other planets. The answer is space exploration. Again, does Gary Johnson realize that he's running for president? I just don't know. Yeah, so those are the four: Clinton, Trump, Stein, and Johnson. And I guess to summarize, if I had to rate them, I guess it's not really that hard to do. The worst, I would say, is Jill Stein. She is terrible when it comes to animal welfare. She is terrible when it comes to the environment, particularly given her anti-nuclear views. But Trump is not too far behind her at all, obviously, given just the fact that he obviously doesn't care about animal welfare, and he obviously doesn't care about climate change either, and if he did become president, would probably make both of those at least a little bit worse, so that sucks. And the best is obviously Hillary Clinton, who actually has statements, who actually has some sort of policy with regard to not only the environment and climate change, but animal welfare as well. Finally, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about anything other than like vegan and environmental issues, but it's just too funny not to mention Stein's kind of policy position with regard to student loans, and her big claim that she's going to cancel student loans, and just her obvious ignorance, maybe dishonesty as well with regard to how exactly she's going to do that. It's really funny. It's all kind of laid out in a John Oliver segment, not, what's the show called? Last Week Tonight segment. It's on YouTube. I'll put the link in the description. He also talks about Johnson as well. The whole thing is just really, really funny. And that is truly it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative, or at least entertaining somewhat, maybe. If you want to subscribe, and I will have a new video very soon.